Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode called How to Connect with Your Kids. My guest is Pastor Jim Berglund. We are continuing part 2 of our discussion. In part 1, he shared his story of how he adopted his son. Now, in this episode, we're going to go into a deeper dive of the image of God and its connection with fatherhood and discuss his books. When I first heard the concept of the image of God, I related it solely to a physical image, as in, I'm a human being. I have a head, I have arms, I have legs, I have a body. Therefore, Jesus must have one too. Therefore, God the Father must have one too. Maybe even the Holy Spirit. And that's about as far as I went with it for the longest time. Now we're discovering that there is a much deeper understanding of the image of God, and that when he created the family unit, it directly models a much bigger concept of the heavenly family unit and our relation to each other. And it's a game changer in how we relate to each other and how we relate to God. And I saw so many parallels with that in your own story and with Pastor Josh's experience as well. We also left off in discussing the issue of sin when we messed up God's reaction, where his first response was to draw near to Adam and Eve. And the second reaction was to ask questions. And you mentioned that the questions were more directed towards helping them understand their own situation, their condition, and most importantly, their need of him.
Yeah, and we look at things from a different standpoint. When we look at things in rule-oriented, for example, our whole goal for perfection is being behaviorally perfect, that we have no flaw in our behavior. But I don't believe God ever thought that after sin we would become behaviorally perfect. There's a difference and the difference between behaviorally perfect and relationally perfect are worlds apart. Let me share with you what first strikes my mind when I see that. I think of a little boy who sees his dad out in the yard and his dad is working hard. And the little boy gets this sudden little thought, I'm going to take my dad a glass of water. So he runs back into the house and he goes to the sink and there's a glass there. Now he doesn't realize that that was actually the glass that mom had used to put dish soap in the dishwasher. Hadn't recognized that. So he reaches up and puts the glass there, and then he reaches and he can't quite turn the spigot back in the right direction. So when he turns it on, it's halfway in between and it's warm water, and he sticks his grimy little finger in and the dirt runs into the water, and he brings out this lukewarm glass and hands it to his dad, and his dad looks at it and there's little floaty things in it. It's warm, the glass is dirty, and he takes and drinks it as a perfect offering because it was given, it's relationally perfect. The heart that motivated that to happen was absolutely perfect. Now, we hope that the kid would grow so that in the future, he would learn that when he brings his dad a glass of water, that it shouldn't be like that. But that's not the point. The heart that motivated that is the point. So what God works on us is having relational perfection, helping us to be in a right standing with God. Righteousness is being in right relationship with God. In fact, being holy means holy. You make something holy by God's presence being there. The ground is holy because God's presence was there for Moses. The sanctuary is holy because God's presence was there in the Shekinah. And people become holy because God's presence is in them, not because they have a list of behavioral perfection. So with that, I can look and say, is my heart being tuned to God? And the only way that happens is by being in connection with him. When we were talking about Josh earlier, we were talking about how those relationships work. And that part of how that happens is that I did things with him. We worked together, we studied together, we prayed together. And I did that with all my kids. And that's, we've been focusing on Josh. I have 2 awesome daughters. My oldest daughter she's a pastor and has been a pastor for years now and enjoyed that ministry. My youngest daughter has a heart for animals, and she lives also in Tennessee, and she works for looking at how to care for and nurture animals. She has that one of the kindest, sweetest hearts you're going to find. Um, and and so what I did with my kids and what the books that I've written, and I have two of them. One called "Dad Pass the Torch," and it's a father-son devotional workbook, and then "Daddy-Daughter Dates." And I wrote them because there are some different things in relationship to boys and girls that daddies can pass along, and for dads, their sons look to them, to their dad, to be the model of who they're going to become and who they want to be, and and for daughters, they look to please dad. They want to be that princess. I call one of my daughters princess and the other angel, because those are, I just wanted them to know that they were precious in my sight. So what I did from the beginning is, and the reason I called it Daddy Daughter Dates is because I used to take my kids on dates individually. My two girls I would take on dates before Josh entered the picture, and take them on dates, and we would do things together, that founded time that I talked about, that foundation of having time together so that we could enter the deeper levels. And we did it in fun things. Sometimes we would go secondhand shopping. Sometimes we would go out and play a game. Sometimes we would drive around and see pretty things. Sometimes we would dream together and draw pictures. It didn't matter so much the things that we did as that we got to spend time together. And we call it daddy-daughter dates. I'll just show you. I know they can't see, but we call it daddy-daughter dates because when it started, I would take my kids to donuts. We would go to it had giant donuts. And when I say that maple bars were this big, as big as your two hands put together, they were that big. And so we would go, and they were just excited to have daddy-daughter dates and do these fun things together. What they didn't realize is it was actually all a part of training and talking. And I had in my mind something each time that I wanted to draw from them to find out where they were at, what was going on in their lives, how they were feeling about themselves, ways to go through, and just like I talked about doing at Christmas time, ways that I could affirm who they were growing to be. My wife is excellent at this skill. It's the thing that I think has transformed me the most. She looks at who she wants me to be, and each time I take a step toward that, she parades it. Champions it. Yeah, it's so awesome that you did that. So, man, that makes me want to do that more and more and more. And so, picking up that skill, looking at our kids, instead of criticizing the things they do wrong, and there are times to correct those things and work with those, but we try to overemphasize when they're taking steps in the right direction. So each time they take a step in the right direction, we parade it, and we find so many things to celebrate. We celebrate grades. We celebrate, oh, look, you went a week without whining about this issue. Well, we'll celebrate anything and have a little party and do fun things, because life already has a lot of hardships. There needs to be some things that that we just learned. So from the beginning, I had a list of things in my mind that I want my kids to learn, that I want them to be, and just systematically teaching them those things and repeating those things again and again and again in their lives. Because honestly, we don't think about it, but the home is the training place for who they're going to become, and how their character is formed in those early years. And if we aren't intentional about it, then the television or the next door neighbors or some other source will be the thing that informs them of who they can be and who they'll become.
You've discussed before, what happens when your child messes up, and it's so bad that they are embarrassed to tell you, they're embarrassed to come to you. And we've been, as human beings, we've been in that position so many times where we've messed up royally, and the last thing we want to do is to pray. We don't want to talk to
Yes.
God about it because there is profound shame. And one thing I've done a recent study into the minor prophets, which are usually books that in the past I've avoided because they come across as being incredibly nerdy and stuff that you just talk about maybe in the seminary, or maybe advanced level undergraduate courses, and that's where you leave that, and that's who that's for. And I've had to do a second look at it, And when I really understood what was going on in some of the experiences that were talked about, um, at one time I remember, and a lot of times I listen to this stuff audibly as I'm driving or whatever. And one time I was driving and I was listening to the way God was relating to his people
Mm.
when they had messed up so bad that, and they were about to experience the consequences and they were not going to be good.
Yes.
And you could almost hear God crying. He was very, very blunt with them about what they did wrong, about how they messed up. And then this is the part that you have to read it carefully to understand it. But he explains what's going to happen ahead of time, and he describes it in our language. Poetry is different, but in Hebrew, poetry is a different thing that's very difficult for us to relate to. But just to make it simple, imagine this, because this is what happened. God just reads a poem to his people. And in the
Mm.
poem, he basically says, yeah, there's a shepherd. I'm very, very loosely paraphrasing this, by the way, and you should read it for yourself. But there's a shepherd and he goes into the fold, and there's the sheep, and they're going to come for you. And when they come for you, I'm going to be in the pen with you. I'm going to be in the fold.
Mm.
In fact, I'm going to be at the gate. And when they come to get you, I'm the first one they're going to get. And like I said, try to get the context of it, because after God is just saying you messed up badly and I'm sorry, I can't get you out of this one. This isn't God striking his finger at them. I'm going to zap you. No, these
Right.
are just natural consequences where God's saying, I'm going to have to let you have your way and learn this the hard way. And I'm not going to be stopping this. But if you wonder where I am when this happens, I'm going to tell you. And then he explains it in a poem. And
Absolutely.
when I read it, I'm not going to even lie, I'm glad no one was around because I broke down.
Yes.
I never understood it that way before, but you get a really deep side of who God is. And then you fast forward and then into the story of Sennacherib, which is when all the stuff actually does unfold sometime in the future. And you read what actually does happen, where all God was waiting for was for Hezekiah to run to him in prayer and to literally say, I messed up.
Mm.
This is not about me anymore. This is about you. I messed up. Here you go. I mean, they're talking bad about you. You're gonna sit there and you gonna let them talk to you like that? You're gonna let them, they're punking you. You gonna sit there and let this happen? Here you go. I'm out. I'm not making this mistake again. And then when you read God's response, you begin to understand there's a big bad boogeyman in the background. And it's plain and simple because Sennacherib was worshiping a demon, just to be blunt about it.
Right.
And this is what's going on in the background. And this demon, in many cases, you can see it. I mean, in the writings of it, it comes through where this demon is talking through Sennacherib, and he's mocking God. And when Jesus addresses Sennacherib, more likely addressing the demon speaking through Sennacherib, it is beyond harsh. And not only has a very harsh, threatening tone, but it comes also across as a dad, um, who will rip you to shreds. And it also comes across you get all kinds of personalities in there. You get the groom who's jealous of and protective of his bride, and you get a father who is extremely protective of his children.
Yes.
And that's the response that you get from that. When we mess up, God, first of all, doesn't leave us. He draws closer to us. We're the ones that feel shameful, like we need to get away.
Yes.
I think of Peter when he met Jesus for the first time, and when he understood who Jesus was in relation to him, his first response is like, "Get away from me! Like I'm a sinful man. Why would you want anything to
Yeah.
do with me?" Um, it's the same response when you were trying to draw near to your son. It's the same response. We can all relate to that. So when I see the story, when I hear the story that you're telling, I see all kinds of traces of the image of God and the character of God playing out. And I also see a legacy, a strong legacy that you're leaving with your family that will last for future generations. So this brings me into my next question, which is what are some simple, actionable steps that dads listening can do right now that will begin to yield results of closeness with their sons or daughters?
The reason I wrote these books is for the purpose of helping guide dads in that process so that they can pick them up and start the process of going through on intentionally deeper levels. So the things that we teach them in these books aren't just, I wouldn't say spiritual in the sense that everything in there is has to do with their spiritual life, but their full life. So, like one of the sayings is, honeybees and buzzards, when combing the desert, both find what they're looking for. And that's one of the principles passed along, is saying you'll find what you're looking for in life, in other people, in the connections that you make. Depending on what you're looking for is what you're going to find. You're either going to find the garbage and the carrion, or you're going to find the beautiful flowers. That depends on you. And so the book actually goes through each of those elements. Forgiveness from God is something that's unending, that he can continue to give us forgiveness as long as we're willing to draw from him. It's like a well that we can continue to go to. Some of the other things are being real, and that's being real with each other, is looking at mistakes, recognizing our brokenness, and not trying to hide that with each other. Because when we realize that we can do that, and I'm accepted by my wife, husband, or my father, then it ends up putting me in a place that I can grow. That we're not just looking at doing, but being. That it's not about just your outside actions, but the inner changes that you make, how you become who you're supposed to be. And then everything from looking at debt and how to deal with debt, and looking at things from the standpoint of don't live with entitlement, don't expect every life to be fair, how we deal with that. Our body's the temple. And this is one of the differences in the guys' books and the girls' books. For example, in the guys' book, we talk about manning up, and we deal with how to deal with lust and sexual passion that we have. And, it's sometimes super hard for a dad to talk to his son about those elements. And if it's scheduled and becomes a part, they need to be able to see sexuality from a God standpoint instead of just as the world has it, and know that sexuality and temptation is something that all men deal with, and how they are going to deal with it, and that can be a part of what your conversation is, and your ability to talk back and forth together about how to handle that. Man, it becomes a huge benefit if you've already talked about it. And so when they have temptation come up, they're able to say, when we talked about this, and how I don't know if I'm handling it really the way I need to, or I messed up in how I handled it. And looking at worshiping God, looking at this is tell others you love them. And that's one of the things we built in, that they need to know it. No, in your relationship, nobody should have to guess as to whether you still currently love them. So if I were to look at then how to do those, I would say each of these, and what I did is I did 52 1-week devotionals. And on each of those, there's a Bible text, a principle that we're teaching, and then an example of somebody in contemporary life that emulates that principle. And then there's additional texts that come with that principle. And then dealing with that, then saying, okay, so let's have a discussion between father and daughter, or dad, about how they see these things, the concepts. Then about a second section about how we put them into our life as family. And then a third section for the child to go through and look themselves and say, how am I honestly doing? Do I believe this? Is this something real to me? In my own life, where am I living it? Where am I not living it? So apart from dad or mom, they can say, do I believe this? Am I going to internalize this as be part of what I believe? Or is it just what dad is teaching me? Because that's okay. We can teach. They have to decide what they're going to embrace. So it gives that opportunity with every single study to go through that process and think it through. And then a Bible example of somebody in Scripture who demonstrates that principle and being able to use that. So with every one of the lessons, it has that opportunity for them to walk.
And I love it because everything about it isn't just about reading a book. It is about actually doing things. There are activities, and everything is centered around engaging. So if you're stuck with how do I do this, it takes the guesswork out of it. You can go step by step and follow through and actually see results as you go along the way. Because I really don't know any dad out there that actually doesn't want to connect with their kids. The big
Right.
question is, how do I do this?
And
And I
sometimes
think,
it seems a little embarrassing, right?
yes,
But if I have a book that's giving me permission to do this and talk about this, then it's no longer embarrassing. It's no longer, oh, I thought this up. It's like, oh, this is right here. Let's talk about this. Since I wrote the books, which is just at the beginning of this year, I went through and rewrote them. The book that I did the 52 lessons with Josh before he left home, because he's my little now boy, and I didn't have him when he was a kid. And I thought, man, is he going to remember these things that we've gone through? And so what I did, I said, I'm going to systematically do it so that we, for 1 year, go through those things before he leaves home. And so that's what we did. And since that time now, I've gone through with, and I'm going through right now with my kids on these books now that they're grown, even in their 30s. One of my administrators here, she said, after looking at the book, I'm taking it and I'm giving it to my adult son because he grew up without his dad there, and I want him to be able to pick up these concepts from someplace. So even though there's not a dad here, I'm going to go through it with him. So yeah.
and I would say too, if you're not used to doing things and engaging in a close sort of way as the books will guide you through doing, don't worry about it. It may not happen perfectly. You might not see the results immediately on every single little thing, and you might mess some things up. And that's part of being human. But that's the difference. Get back up and try again. Go through the
Absolutely.
exercise, keep doing it, be patient with yourself, and do not give up. Your kids aren't going to see all the little small things here and there that you mess up, but they will see that you got up and then you tried. And your effort with this is going to be a lesson in and of itself. It's going to be a legacy of you trying and being consistent, being stubborn about wanting to spend that time with them and doing so.
Yes, absolutely. You could do this even just for a half hour. You could make it a half hour depending on how much discussion you do. A half hour a week. It's like, wow, wouldn't I be willing to invest a half hour a week to connect with my kids and pass along values for the next generation? So that's why the passing the torch, that's why that concept is passing the values on to the next generation and giving it to them. If I were to look at from this, it goes through the things that we talked about. The book goes through and talks about it's not just rules with God, it's a relationship. It goes through and helps them to look at how to have their own relationship with God. It helps them to look past just the process of taking beliefs and actually having connection and prayer and those sorts of things together. So it's built to be a relational tool all in itself.
How can dads listening connect with you and or find your books?
The books are on Amazon. This is 9 books for me now that I have on Amazon. And also they're in the Adventist Book Center. But on Amazon, you can just go in and look under my name. It's actually James Berglund for the titles of the books. I go by Jim, but James Berglund for the titles of the books. And you'll just be able to see my books there on Amazon and just order them that direction.
And also, just to make things easier, if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode and you're looking for part 2 of how to connect with your kids, how to connect with your kids, that's the episode title that you're looking for, part 2. Look right below the episode description, and I will have the links posted right there for your convenience. Pastor Berglund, as we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now?
There are these things that dads need to do with their kids. Number one is to instill in them that they are loved unconditionally and to demonstrate that. I would say, two, looking at helping them to have the context of other-centeredness, to look at outside of themselves, that they're here for service and that that's a part of who they are, is to serve others. The third is being rather than just doing, that they need to become rather than just look at the outside behaviors. That they need to do things that change them from the inside out, not from the outside in. And that those transformations will be long-term things. And then 4, to have fun in the process, because it's an awesome thing. And your kids know if you're enjoying them and having fun in the whole process themselves, they pick it up.
Pastor Berglund, thank you so much for all of your time, for sharing your own story and testimony, for sharing your books with us, and a lot of wisdom along the way. I really appreciate it.
It's been great. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity. God bless.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.